Rocky Flats Right to Know. I'm Mary Whitney, and so honored to have Stan. I met Stan when we had Kristen Iverson speak for our meeting. Afterwards, he gave me a copy of the beginning of his book, and then the link to the entire book, and I was really moved. So I'm so honored that you agreed to come, and thank you. Diane was just telling me, her husband said, "Why are you still meeting? The refuge is open." There's still so much work to do. People need to know why they should not go to the refuge. The signage is not adequate.
Yeah.
The parkway is still on track. You need to talk to your elected officials and be active with this, because if they build a parkway, which is a high-speed toll road along Indiana that's thousands of times above background level, that's going to stir up so much plutonium, and we're going to have more adverse health effects.
Yeah.
So we need to be really vocal about opposing the parkway. I don't see that it benefits any of us anyway. People who use Indiana want to be able to use it for free. There's what's the name of that? Indiana will not be maintained past whatever condition it's in, because it's a non-compete clause for the tollway. So once the tollway is built, Indiana, right, Dale? You're familiar with that non-compete clause. So we still have a lot of work. This tollway, supposedly completes we don't have a symmetrical beltway around Denver. Oh, God forbid, we don't have a symmetrical beltway. There's a good reason we don't. It's because of Rocky Flats. And it came up for elections, and the people voted it down, and they voted it down, and they voted it down.
Yeah.
So then developers or bankers or these entities that are pushing it through came up with the idea, oh, let's just make it a tollway. It's private. It won't use any federal funds. We don't have to do any environmental testing.
Yeah.
So they're not planning to do any testing. So it's really an outrage. So we still have that work to do. If you're good with computers, check out NOAA. If you check your weather on NOAA, it uses something called Esri Maps, and it doesn't even call it Rocky Flats. It calls it Rocky Mountain National Wildlife Refuge. So if you wanted to learn about what's there, you wouldn't learn. And then Zillow, also, we had a big campaign, and even got my husband's attorney on board to try and get Bing Maps. Zillow uses Bing Maps to correct it, because they were calling it Rocky Mountain also instead of Rocky Flats. And so Bing Maps is correct now, but Zillow is using some special version that at certain zooming in and zooming out, it's still called Rocky Mountain National Wildlife Refuge. So if you wanted to buy $1 million home and you go, I wonder what's around here, I'm gonna check, and I mean, there's really no signage to let people know. So if you can work on that map thing, I'm kind of stymied on it. So we need help with figuring out how to get NOAA. I tried. And then if you want to get involved with going to city council meetings, I did not put Arvada. I think it's a lost cause, frankly. But right. Both Westminster and Broomfield have been incredibly impacted by Rocky Flats with their water issues. Broomfield, if you know the history of Broomfield, there was a big tritium spill. The Rocky Flats waste was going into their drinking water source, which is Great Western Reservoir. There were stillbirths, there were blue babies, there were people were getting really sick. And in desperation, Broomfield started building a big ditch, and the EPA wanted to fine them a whole bunch of money. Do you remember how much money? Because they were building this ditch, and then finally the EPA kind of got on board and went, yeah. And now Broomfield has a completely separate water source than Great Western Reservoir.
You had something about the parks apparently still
Right.
use the water from Great Western.
But it
which
does
is
go
Walnut Creek and.
It does go through, it goes to their water treatment system first before it's sprayed on the parks. So hopefully
That's
it
what
gets out.
they told me too.
Right, it's well documented, and it's, there are even pictures on the website of where they put the pipes and everything. So and the water treatment plant, so I'm hopeful.
Okay.
I talked to David
Okay.
Allen with Broomfield Water. And, one thing, it's kind of interesting with City of Broomfield, City and County of Broomfield, a lot of the people know really what's going on, but they have to keep their jobs, so they can't really speak out.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing he said to me that about Rocky Flats, and he is opposed to the refuge being open. The plant site is a Superfund site, and it is not stable. Those were his words. It is not stable. So if you notice, the original plans for the Greenway Trail going through Rocky Flats originally was going through that northeast corner close to Broomfield. Broomfield put the pressure on, and it doesn't go anywhere close to Broomfield. No trails going into Broomfield. They know. So if you want to go and talk at the meeting, it really isn't that bad, and just say, appreciate what you've done. Sorry you've been impacted by Rocky Flats. Appreciate what you've done in the past. Please oppose the Jefferson Parkway. And you have 5 minutes to say that, but you could just say it just that much. And I put the meeting dates on here. And then again with City of Westminster, Stanley Lake was and is very contaminated. Hopefully it stays in the sediment, and their water treatment plant supposedly takes out plutonium and other contaminants. And I've been assured by their water people, and I do trust that the water, I personally don't drink it, but
I don't either.
But yeah, I think that they're doing their very best to keep the water. And what they did is they built a whole reservoir called the Woman Creek Reservoir, and that diverts the water from the Rocky Flats site to Walnut Creek. It takes it north so it does not enter Stanley Lake. So it's not getting any more contamination beyond what Stanley Lake already has. So they both, Westminster and Broomfield, know the scoop. So when you talk, feel like they're allies, but then say to City and County of Broomfield, because they have $200,000 a year for the past 10 years, which is $2 million in their taxpayer money already towards the parkway. Jefferson County, same thing. City of Arvada, same thing. So in the past 10 years, $6 million towards the Jefferson Parkway of taxpayer money, a private tollway. It is not right. So speak out against that. And then if you want something really not fun to do, you can go on Monday morning to the Rocky Flats Stewardship Council board meeting. It's actually not, it was so interesting. At one of these stewardship board meetings, they had a discussion whether they should keep the name stewardship, since they're not actually stewards.
Yeah.
So I thought that was quite interesting, and they are not stewards, and it's DOE funded. And their goal is to have us all believe that everything's hunky-dory, and they're there. Don't worry your pretty little head about it at all. So it's really good to have citizen oversight. You are allowed to speak during public comment also. So that's this coming Monday at 8:30 in the morning. Citizens have repeatedly asked that it be at a time when more citizens could go, and that's been denied. And I inquired if they could have a repeat meeting in the evening for the public, and that was denied. So, let's see, and then I also put towards the bottom that JPPHA is the Jefferson Parkway Public Highway Authority. I should have spelled out what that acronym meant. But Arvada City Hall, if you want to bang your head against the wall and go speak to the people who want this private tollway, please do. Marion and I have spoken many times, but fresh faces do get their interest a little bit. So if you can go to any of these meetings, please do. I know everyone's busy, but it's much appreciated. It might save somebody's life. As we all know here, each and every one of us have been impacted by Rocky Flats. So that's it for me, and I'll turn it over to Stan. Go ahead. Yeah, Marion.
We heard there were a couple of people at one of the entrances to the refuge, and when a family came along, the people, I think it was Judith from Rock Mountain Peace and Justice, anyway.
And Alicia, I think.
And when they told the people, it's a Superfund site.
In the center of the refuge, it's still an active nuclear Superfund
And
site. They go, really?
The buffer zone was never funded. Well, those people turned around, got in the car and left.
Yeah.
So people need to know, and it matters that we're there to tell them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm happy that you guys invited me to share a story that I've actually been working on about my best friend from high school, Brian Van Wagenen. So just, I'll probably just get to reading this, but you know, I grew up in Lake Arbor, and he grew up by the Silos, which is behind the Village Inn. And we both went to Pomona High School. When I first started writing this, I didn't know anything about, well, I didn't necessarily make a connection between what was happening with him and things that have happened to people that lived adjacent to my house right after I graduated. But I can talk to you a little bit more about that. And so a lot of what I've written and illustrated was not with any particular agenda. It was just me writing a memoir, and I kind of talk about it at the beginning of the story. So I'll just go ahead and read the first few pages of this, and then just to kind of let you know where the project is in the process, because it's not published yet. But I'm looking for a publisher at this point, and but here, without any further ado, this is a story, Regret, a cancer survivor's story.
Stan,
Yes.
you might want to contact Hay House. They're looking for authors.
Okay.
Reed Tracy
Okay.
would be the person to
I'll
contact.
take down that information after this, so
Okay.
make sure to grab me so that I won't remember.
Okay.
My name is Stan Yan, and this may well be the most important story I've ever written. And although I loathe to insert myself into it, I feel it's important for folks to know that this is my perspective of things. As you probably figured out, I'm a comic artist / writer. I'm also a comics instructor. Erica is my wife, the woman who makes my mere existence possible. You're not going to hang out where my mom will see it, are you? Brian has been my best friend since high school. I love you, little buddy. Squeeze. Yeah. Amy is Brian's amazing wife. Hit him, tackle him already. Brian's been my movie and gaming buddy, my workout partner, my clubbing buddy, and ladies' man. While his luck with the girls never rubbed off on me, his amazing self-confidence was a good example and made me the good, I hope, person that I am today. Buddha, Buddha, bang, bang. Whose bright idea was it to take the girl I have a crush on to see this? Whoa, ha ha ha, did you see his brain splatter? I'll jump over the wall and hit him with my two-handed sword. I'm still hiding and studying my spells. I don't think it's all you, Stan. Prince is kind of gay, isn't he? So what? It's really awesome to dance to. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Incidentally, he's responsible for Erica and I getting married, as we met as a result of him and her then best friend dating. We used to watch you dancing at Modine's. We used to call you Model Man. Oh yeah? What did you call me? I don't think we noticed you. Tuesday, July 29th, 2009. Eric and I had been really looking forward to coming out to Las Vegas to visit with Brian and Amy, even before we found out Brian had cancer. But once Brian told us, it had become ever more imperative for us to see him. As I rode up the elevator to our room at the Luxor to write these first few words, I couldn't help but think about what brought me to this point. From one standpoint, I feel a little guilty for using my friend's misfortune as fodder for a story. I've been struggling to find a voice about my thoughts on the topic of death since my mom died of ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, after a 7-year battle in 1995. Brian and I are going to the gym for my afternoon lower body workout. Think. That means yes. Granted, I wrote a short story about her for the alt-brand MDA Webathon many years ago, but I've wanted to write a longer story about her life, and now it's too late to ask her some of the critical questions about her interesting life in China before and during the communist takeover. You can't trust people, Stan. I learned that when the communists made me and my elementary schoolmates gather in the playground to watch executions.
Oh.
And incidentally, her brothers and sisters asked me about this when I sent that to them. They're like, is that true? I'm like, she never told you? So literally these stories went to the grave with her. My renewed interest was stoked by my friend Matt, who underwent a double lung transplant and talked to me about perhaps writing a graphic novel for his kids about how to deal with the death of a parent. He was still dealing with recovering from his transplant, and I'd yet to hear from him. And I'd hoped he'd still have a passion for writing a story before long. I know Matt and I both shared a similar concern about being too late to say the things that we needed to say. We shared regret. Matt never got back to me about it, and now it's too late. So that's the beginning of my story. And you can see a few more pages. I brought a few copies of the preview. The full story is available for people that support my Patreon. And so, they can read the story cover to cover. At this point, the first 30 pages are completely done with finished art. The remaining 71 pages are kind of rough draft art, but I've been in the process for the last, I think, about 2 years in looking for a charitable partner to connect with me to publish it as a fundraiser, which I did have 2 charities that had an interest, but when I gave them a printing quote, they kind of backed out. And then when I said, well, I can give you a printing quote for less books, but I haven't heard back from them since. So right now, with the rest of my publishing career, I'm at the point where I've got a few literary agents that are interested. They've requested full manuscripts of a children's graphic novel that I have. But I do want to approach them with the possibility of finding a publisher for this book as well. Now, the whole, proceeds going to charity thing may be different, because if they find a publisher that doesn't want to donate proceeds to charity, then it'll just be, my royalties that will go to a charitable foundation or something like that. But after I'd finished writing the story, and as I was posting updates of the illustrations, my old next door neighbor that lived next to me told me that, hey, you should check out this book, Full Body Burden by Kristen Iverson. She went to high school with us. And so I'm like, okay, cool. So I ended up purchasing it based on their recommendation and reading about it and just finding out about all these things. And so all these little puzzle pieces started coming together. So my friend Brian had a liver-related cancer. It was a bile duct cancer. And so I was like, well, who knows? We used to do a little bit of binge drinking in our partying days. I might have been a part of it. And then plus he was really into bodybuilding, whereas I didn't want to put anything that I didn't know about. He actually worked for EAS and used to take the Met-Rex and stuff. I'm like, well, we don't even know what's in there, and it all affects your liver in some way, shape, or form. So and I was like, well, maybe that was it. But then after reading what was in Full Body Burden and going, geez, this was stuff that was going on, like, during our junior and senior year in high school, and I think that was when the last fire happened, was our junior year. That was, kind of a big event that no one knew about. 87. Yeah, so that was our junior year. And and then after we graduated, my backyard neighbor, Wade Schaefer, died of brain cancer the year after. And then the people that moved into the house next to me, to the house of the neighbor that told me about Kristen's book, the wife died of cancer. The husband went through cancer treatments. He survived. And then my friend across the street, my same age as well, Joel Rocco. I don't know if you guys knew him at all. But they moved back to Utah, but a year or two after we graduated, his brother came back to visit and told me that he died of cancer as well. And these are all people that lived adjacent to me, not to mention Derek Rochamoon's dad, Tammy Bust, her mom, I think, also. And these are all people that lived in Lake Arbor.
So are you planning to maybe use this as a vehicle for a survey?
Not really. I mean, I'd actually been sharing around that research survey that was being conducted for Metro, but apparently that's been kind of threatened away into non-existence, I guess.
Right, but hopefully there will be even a more epidemiologically sound study undertaken soon. We're working on that. People are working on
So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of curious things that I hadn't really thought about because we don't hear about it, obviously. And so, I mean, me working on this project in a roundabout way and reuniting with people on Facebook, has done a lot of things for my career and personal trajectory. Not to mention that my whole caricature career is probably because of Facebook. Sarah Stokes, our student body president, saw my artwork at the Denver Chalk Art Festival one year and reached out to me on Facebook because of that. And she hired me to do this.
How old was your friend?
He was, let's see,
Could
just
you
turned
repeat
40.
the question?
Oh, so the question was how old was he when he passed away? So yeah, book spoiler.
Oh, sorry.
Unfortunately.
Well, the only reason I'm asking is, I personally know 5 people with bile duct that have bile duct
Wow.
cancer.
All that grew up in.
Fairly close to
Sarah.
where there you are. My mother-in-law, your son-in-law, a neighbor, right? That's a neighbor. I have 2 friends from work. They all have, and one's currently going through it right now. So it's interesting. They keep saying bile duct cancer is.
Actually, no, he didn't quite turn 40. He just turned 39, actually.
And your son-in-law is only 34. So it's supposed to be fairly rare cancer, and it seems pretty
Yeah.
strange.
Well, and unfortunately, it doesn't really show any symptoms until you're essentially stage 4. So, I mean, his chances at that point were pretty slim. So the course of my book is while he was alive. And so it spans the 9 months from diagnosis to when he passed away. So, but I didn't have the heart to change the title of it because I wrote it while I was alive, and it was kind of a hopeful thing, you know. And it was, you know, I mean, you're a cancer survivor whether you live 9 months or if you go into remission and, you know, you live for 20, 30 years after. I mean, all of them are survivors. I mean, no matter whether you're cancer or not, we're all going to die. So, you know, but I mean, you know, everyone that's been diagnosed with cancer is kind of in a unfortunate club of having to go through treatments or just, you know, the suffering of the you know, the symptoms that you have as cancer takes over your body. So,
Stan,
yeah.
what was the reason for his lung transplant?
Oh, my friend Matt, he had cystic fibrosis.
Oh,
Yeah. So I don't really know if that had anything to do with, because I don't know if, so you know the Jollies, right? So Matt is Andy Jolly's brother.
Oh, right. He's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And so anyway, I don't actually know, this is horrible because Andy was my best friend in elementary school and we still meet all the time, but I don't know if they were born in Colorado. They may have been born in Ohio.
Well, there are plenty of messes in Ohio. I grew up near the Miamisburg Mound Superfund megasite, and we always called it the Monsanto Mound, long before Monsanto had the hideous name that
Right.
image it now has.
Yeah.
But there's also Fernald in the same proximity of Cincinnati,
Okay.
exactly, that Rocky Flats is to Denver,
Oh, wow.
upstream
Right.
and upwind. Northwest, it's just the same. It's like it was laid out by the same people, and it might have been.
Mhm.
probably was.
Yeah. And then there's other stuff along there was an atomic plant on the Ohio River and
Mhm.
Moscow, Ohio, no less. And then there was the Goodyear hush hush, let's not tell anybody anything in Chillicothe,
Mhm.
which was near where I went to school.
Oh.
So, and in fact, I was probably downwind of it.
Uh-huh.
But nobody ever talked about it. It was all hush hush. And that was about the same time that we thought, that many people thought Rocky Flats was making dog.
He'll analyze it and we'll get the results. And also, there's something about, Bonnie, something about ashes too.
Right.
That
'Cause
they
Right.
can
for
detect.
Brian, that would be if there's anything
Oh,
left.
yeah, so if his family would be willing to have those analyzed, then we'd get some real scientific information.
Right. Yeah, I still need to do that. But I don't know, I might be opening up some wounds because
Well, and
I haven't been able to get a hold of his widow, and then I guess she had had his ashes, and then his dad, who didn't have a good relationship with her, was angry because she was just gonna take him up to Oregon and dump him into the ocean, and he didn't want that. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
you get into
Maybe he got a
very-
part of him, I don't know.
very emotional things, and yet some people, when they go through their grieving process, if they think, I can help prevent somebody else from going through this, sometimes that's a good thing.
Mhm.
Sounds like that's something to put in a living will.
Yeah.
I want a
Probably.
sample sent to so-and-so, here's the address. And then you have an attorney and they have to execute it. Probably the only way it's gonna happen for those of us here.
Yeah, I'll try and put Michael Ketterer's information on the Rocky Flats Right to Know website. If you don't see it up there, shoot me up.
Just bug you.
Bug me, please, because that is important to have that information available to people and to spread the word. The hope is, even more than the Metro study, the actual concrete evidence that we are impacted here as downwinders by Rocky Flats, because as Marion just said, the weapons grade Rocky Flats plutonium is different in its chemical signature than background, because our entire planet has plutonium contamination from nuclear bomb testing, but Rocky Flats plutonium is different.
The isotopic ratio is different.
Thank you. Yes.
So, anyway, just if you would like to know more information about my book and progress of it, I'll have my cards out and stuff like that, so that you can sign up on my website for my newsletter. So I'll try to get you guys updates from that. And you know, if the publisher thing doesn't work out either, then I'll probably end up doing some sort of crowdfunding campaign, in which case I won't be able to raise as much money for charity, but you know, it'll do something at least.
I recommend being a Patreon, only $5 a month to scan, and then you'll get to read the whole book.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Does your book talk about living next to Rocky Flats?
No, because like I said,
You hadn't put it
it was,
together.
yeah, it was just
Okay,
more of
got
a
it.
personal story
Okay.
about our relationship, which was really kind of the, you know, the driving force behind me needing to write this story.
Sure.
You know, and I feel bad that it's taken me so long for it to get as far as it has, but you know,
Like,
a lot of different reasons for it. A lot of times your passion projects aren't what put food on the table either, so. Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, the thing that really is the majority of my livelihood is I draw zombie caricatures of people, which is, I think, one of the reasons he wanted me to show up before Halloween.
Right.
It could be a good Halloween-themed thing.
So we can open the meeting up to whatever anybody wishes now, because Dan did offer for a willing victim to be drawn as a zombie picture.
Yes.
Or does anybody
Well, I mean, we'll
want-
save that for the end, because I didn't want to
Okay.
take any time away from anyone that wants to, you know, talk about stuff. Because I think that's primarily why we're all here, is to talk about our stories and whatnot. Yes.
Have you thought about adding a different section that puts some perspective around being downwind from Rocky Flats?
I probably won't add it because it's about his survival in the story, but one of the things that I did want to do is, once this book is published and out there and I start doing signings and hopefully a traveling art show, I wanted to, especially here in town, I wanted to invite your organization to be there, to be a part of my signing, to help educate people that you know, want to know a little bit more about this subject.
You know, you can self-publish on Amazon.
Yeah, I've done that quite a bit with very limited success. So I would prefer not to self-publish if at all possible, because I feel like, great, I could sell, you know, a few hundred books and raise a couple $100 for a charity and awareness for those few hundred people, or you know, I might be able to, you know, sell a few 100,000 books if I get a trade publisher, and that'll give me a larger platform and in turn you guys as well. So I don't know. I mean, a cross-country tour, whether that's something that you guys want to do.
You could tour all the nuclear weapons sites.
Nah, we live close enough to one.
It's kind of my understanding that bile duct cancer is one of those really super rare, caused by radio, how do you say it, radiation. Yeah. I feel very certain, and I have a dear friend just died recently also of diabetic cancer.
It's
And we
just
used to go
strange, so many
sailing on Stanley Lake. There's no signage there.
When was that? When did you go
Um,
sailing? Or-
We went sailing on Stanley Lake, probably early 2000s.
Yeah, we went to high school with Stan. I grew up probably in Bryan's neighborhood. I grew up in Kings Mill. Actually, live around there now too. We was in the title. Yeah. So, but I remember as a kid in the 70s and 80s, signage or not, we knew you weren't supposed to go there. Nobody goes in the water, and people are maybe on boats, but very few. I'm just so dumbfounded that people are on the water presently and in the water, paddle boarding and whatever else. And we talk about the sediment, and recently I was at the meeting at the Westview Rec Center. Was anybody there in the last couple months? When they were talking about the
The
Bridgeway,
Greenway Trail.
the trail.
The Greenway Trail.
Yeah.
The testing up there.
Yeah, the 2-inch deep testing. Yeah, I took that tester guy, finger on his chest about it. And, they're testing, they did test the soil 2 inches deep. And I was like, so having built a house, I know that you need more than 2 inches. Because you're going, oh, no,
They should have different fractions, including surface dust.
So some good news about that Greenway Trail. We mentioned Dr. Michael Ketterer, and through some people, and Andrew Valdez, head of Jefferson County Open Space, some influential people spoke, and Michael Ketterer is going to do split sampling. Unfortunately, it's going to be whatever they take, but he is going to do it his way, and he's going to take it to the lab in Arizona and hopefully get his results. But the samples have not been taken yet. So as far as I know.
They're only testing the entrances.
Right.
They're not doing the entire trail.
Not testing the entire trail through, and that's what to
Just for
speak
the-
at.
And no one will go off the trail.
Yeah,
Right.
right. Well, you're not even actually going into Rocky Flats, right? You're just going to the entrance,
entrance,
and then you're gonna like
Turn your bike
catapult over, and then to
And the
the
wind
other
won't
spot where
hit
they're
you.
testing.
But they swore they'd get a ticket if they went off the trail.
Yeah. But anyway, that is good news. He thinks he can get it done probably a week sooner than Jefferson County releases their results. So stay tuned for that.
But
But
it just seems really strange that how many people have bile duct in this area.
Right.
It's really, and then the other thing that seems like there's so many people that have thyroid issues. It's a huge problem.
It's super common, actually. I have an
And
RN.
I've talked to people who have MS.
Right.
Who
And there's
tell
a lot
me
of
about,
mess.
there were all these people on my block, and people who lived up by,
My first father-in-law died of MS, and my son-in-law has MS.
where did they live?
Originally, he was from California, and then he spent his formative years here, I'd say North Arvada-ish. My in-laws lived down near 58th and Kipling. And as a matter of fact, when the 57 fire happened, my mother-in-law Sarah was out in the backyard gardening with the two boys out there. And she saw this huge plume, and she said, "You boys go inside, I'll come in when I'm done." And one of the boys, Sam, my brother-in-law, he told us this, maybe 10 years ago. He said when she came in, one side of her body was beet red.
Oh my gosh.
And he never forgot that. That's, of course, the side that the cancer started on and got up into her brain. And then, well, her husband, he died of MS.
But it's back to, whenever you say something like that, everybody just says, well, you don't know it's caused from wax. It could have been any other thing.
I don't think it's a coincidence.
I know, I don't either.
To have the
Mhm.
smoke from the 57 fire overhead and one side of your body turn beet red. And then, the metallic taste in the mouth.
Oh.
Right in your quiet
The same
exposure.
thing, 57 with my husband. My mother-in-law was pregnant with him, and he was born with a partial club foot, and he ended up dying of bone cancer. So, it's
Seeker.
And she's the one that had bile duct cancer.
yeah, she had bile duct cancer. And then your dad had sepsis.
Did they have a home garden?
Did they have a what?
Home garden.
The only thing they grew was rhubarb.
But they consumed it.
Yes, oh, yes.
Oh, that's true, I didn't think of that.
Because the bile duct, to me,
No.
that implies that it may have been promoted and initiated through food, processing food. That's just my contention as a biologist. It just seems like a reasonable mechanism.
Yeah, I knew a lady, her family were great gardeners. They had fruit trees, they had lived there a long time. When she was, I think, her upper 20s, she got liver cancer, and she died.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we just had somebody from work die of liver cancer.
And that was close to 94th and Wadsworth Parkway.
And his mother died of liver cancer. Coincidence or not.
Like liver cancer's kind of a big one too.
By the time you realize you got something going on in your liver,
Well, same with
It's your-
pancreas.
it's your most vascular organ in your body, and it's your largest organ. So, all that filtering,
Well, and when they discovered Brian's, it had already spread all the way through his liver, so it was probably growing the whole time, and it wasn't until the ducts got blocked that there were any symptoms.
you probably got jaundice from that.
Yeah.
That's what my mom
Yeah.
was.
That's the only visible thing from any liver issue, or even gallbladder blocking the bile duct.
It's probably because it's not communicating anymore.
That's a great way to get honor your friend though.
Yeah.
Really, and you're a hell of an illustrationist.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I can't stop myself from drawing.
It's a
I
calling.
go to do school visits, and one of the most frequent questions they ask is, how'd you get so good? If I look back on my life, the longest period of time I didn't spend drawing was about a month. So, if you think about it like athletics, it's just muscle memory, really.
Yeah.
Training your hand to do what your brain wants it to do, and I was explaining to you, don't run a marathon until you've run a mile, right? So the first time you draw a dog will be the worst time you ever draw a dog.
What charities are you looking to donate to?
Well, there were, I think there was about, in my last Patreon update, I can actually give you the names of some of them. There were about, about 20 of them or something like that. Let's see here. So the local ones I reached out to were Ray of Hope, Cancer League of Colorado, the Colorado Cancer Foundation, and Anschutz and the Rocky Mountain Cancer Association. And the only one of the local ones that got back to me was the what was it? Cancer Foundation. They called me. And then I don't know how to pronounce it, it's cholangiocarcinoma.
Good job.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
Yes, that's the bile duct. I didn't know there was one specific,
Yeah.
but in my research I found it, so I reached out to them, and they actually had an initial interest and then decided against it. After the lady I talked to her board, and then of the National Research Foundations, I think it was the National Foundation for Cancer Research was the one that got back to me. But I reached out to Target Cancer Foundation, ThriveWell, Cancer Foundation for Life, National Foundation for Cancer Research, Jimmy V Foundation, Damon Runyon, Waxman Center, National Cancer Association, National Research Foundation, Tower Cancer Research Foundation, Jack and Jill Late Stage Cancer, Prevent Cancer Foundation, and Immerman's Angels. And that was someone else told me that I should reach out to them. Someone that I met at San Diego Comic-Con, actually. But yeah, I haven't heard back from any but the three, and a lot of them I reached out to a year ago. So I'll move on. That was my my first try at getting a publisher that was a foundation. This might be a good opportunity for you to raise a few funds, raise some awareness. And, my book, I've been told by a lot of the people that have read it, or portions of it, there's a lot of victim and family support that they see, being a possibility with a publication like this. And there's actually one organization that I haven't reached out to yet that I found out through one of my children's book artist friends that I don't know if people donate books to them or they actually publish books, but they're for grief counseling, essentially. And so that's probably an organization I'll eventually reach out to as well in the process of doing this.
I think that's a really good idea. I had, so not to do a spoiler, and I won't do a spoiler, but my first husband died of cancer when he was 47. Happily remarried. But that grief journey is, as probably everyone here, of course, knows, and the way, I just feel like Stan's book is so unique with the graphic, the drawings. And when Brian dies, when you found out Brian died, and I just sat there staring at the computer, and it's, oh my goodness. It's really an incredible page in your book for that.
Well, a lot of the details I found out at the end that I included, I found out from his mother-in-law at his memorial. So they had just kind of an impromptu memorial at Mar here locally, just to remember Brian, and she told me about all the little details that I ended up putting in there. So.
But
I made
yeah,
up
that's
the
great,
dialogue.
but I just meant, there are books, children's books about grief, but to have.
Well, it's not a
this is-
children's book either. really.
Exactly. I don't mean that, but lots of books about grief and stories people share of all ages. I didn't mean to say children, I'm sorry, but I just feel like your book is unique. And it needs to get out there. So I hope everybody joins Stan's Patreon, and then you can see that scene that I'm talking about, because it's really good.
Yeah, you can see the first 24 pages here.
I used to like have the image like of an elephant stepping on my chest. I mean, that's what it felt like, but Stan didn't draw that, but what he drew was amazing, so.
Want to look at it?
Yeah. please.
Well, would anybody else like to share? Looks like we probably could wrap up the meeting a little bit early. Also, we're really lucky it is being recorded. If anyone does not want to be recorded, please let our photographer know, videographer.
I'm the only one that's facing this way though, so it should be just everyone's backs in their head.
You guys all have a pretty fair degree of anonymity on here, so.
Okay, okay.
There you go.
Let me get my cards.
Okay, so.
Do you guys have any interaction with the nuclear worker groups that are caring for the workers?
Organizations that are helping the workers.
Like
Oh.
with healthcare, home healthcare?
Oh, home health care.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Nuclear partners, and there's at least one other group.
So technically, you don't have to just choose one of the nuclear specific ones. Under the compensation program, the person should be able to use whoever they want. And then, of course, you're going to want to choose your agency based on the patient's individual level of care requirements. So that's a huge variable.
There have been meetings where we've had people speak, and I do have a notebook of cards, different ones that are recommended.
And at this point, it's just workers, so any downwinders with issues have no, yeah,
There's no official recognition for downwinders.
Well,
Right.
not in Colorado.
Not in Colorado, so,
Yes.
yeah, let me
Not
caveat
in
that.
Colorado.
Yeah,
not in
and
Rocky
the
Mount.
most recent nuclear legislation that was moving through the House earlier this year had provisions added to it for Colorado, but it stalled on the Senate floor, never went anywhere.
Big surprise.
But it was to privatize nuclear waste and make the taxpayers deal, not leaving it with the government, so it's better than it failed, but it's a very complicated issue. But yeah, so there are a few people that know that, the communities surrounding these nuclear waste sites and these Superfund sites need downwinder status, because otherwise you can't get the health benefits.
I think the Utah downwinders managed to get health status.
Yes, they did.
Oh,
Yes.
recognized.
Yeah. And then I think there's some provisional for certain areas of Arizona. And then New Mexico, obviously, with
And Nevada.
and Nevada. Yeah, exactly. So those are the regions that actually do
I
have.
think J. Preston Truman, probably the person to talk to for help in that area.
Okay. Take that then. Yeah, so, I mean, and that's a opportunity for you. If you are able to get this published, I would say network those Superfund communities, because they're gonna embrace this and be able to help you in ways that you wouldn't find, that you wouldn't even think were possible. And it's a very strong community. We're one of many.
Oh, yeah. Like 1,000? Well, no,
Yeah,
not
I mean,
1,000.
I know people across the nation now from
Yeah.
doing this work. Because unfortunately, our US government pooped everywhere.
Sure did.
Yeah.
And
that's
they
well said.
weaponized the US in order to run their program, and at our cost and our expense.
Whenever the treaty is over with, we might just be going back to the very beginning.
Right, right.
Well, something encouraging, I'm not positive, but I think at our November meeting, Dr. Mark Johnson, who's head of Jefferson County Public Health, will be our speaker. So I haven't announced it yet because it's not confirmed, but I'm hopeful, and he is one who has spoken out. And if we could help empower him, we're just up against big money and developers and that care more about profit than health. And, but Dr. Mark Johnson's a powerful speaker and knows that we have been impacted, like his predecessor, Dr. Carl Johnson. So stay tuned. I'm hopeful that he'll be our speaker in November.
Is Thanksgiving going to affect?
It isn't because our meeting is the week after
Okay.
Thanksgiving. Yeah.
It would be very useful if somehow, if Mark Johnson shows up, we could ask him how Jefferson County residents can assist the Jefferson County Department of Health, given the nature of life here and the polluters that we've been hammered with for 60 years or more.
Trust that.
Yeah.
He's
Well, we have to make sure he does.
Right.
Carl Johnson tried to recruit me to do community surveys, and foolishly I turned it down. And this was really diabolical because I would have had the opportunity probably to work with Dr. Alice Stewart.
wow.
And
Wow.
she's gone, she died about 10 years ago. A real loss.
Yeah.
But
And
we
if
were lucky
those
enough
of
to
you who
have her
don't
come out
know,
here and
Alice
talk.
That's right, we were
Stewart.
very lucky.
Alice Stewart was the one who discovered pregnant women shouldn't have x-rays, but that was
Yeah.
really poo-pooed at first. But now, it's really common knowledge that pregnant women should women should not get x-rays. But then she went beyond that with the dangers of
She
of
really
radiation.
pioneered data about childhood leukemia.
And the book, The Woman Who Knew Too Much, is about her, and I urge you all to read it.
Yeah, it's a very nice biography. But we have to remember, her advice was we should not x-ray pregnant women. But Ignaz Semmelweis, in 100 and something years before her, made it clear that we have to wash our hands.
Yeah.
And hand washing in America's hospitals is inadequate to this day.
That's true.
Okay?
They're working on it.
So there are
but
still
it's-
women being x-rayed who are pregnant or maybe are pregnant and don't even know it.
That's why we run HCGs on them before x-rays.
Say that again?
That's why we run pregnancy tests on all women of childbearing age before x-rays.
Okay, yeah.
It's a protocol.
I have one more thing to add. Bonnie, you mentioned about developers and they want to make money. And when somebody asked me, what's Rocky Flats? I said it was friendly fire and collateral damage. So I think the connection with why they want to have this weapons to wildlife, this is my opinion. It's because the people who are the war profiteers, I'm going to call them that, the people who make weapons or get money from making weapons and selling them, and people who have the nuclear plants, they don't want people to know there's dangerous.
Joan called them prostitutes for plutonium.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But then people have to stop and think about the whole militaristic,
If the military industrial complex had not grown out of control and been allowed to sell arms, we would be in the situation we are now.
yeah,
But they were allowed to grow a cottage industry into a monster.
yeah, and.
Oh,
it's
we
the-
can't tell for sure if we're morally outraged about Saudi Arabia killing a journalist because there's billions of dollars of
We
arms
have to
sales
sell.
on the line.
We have to sell, yeah,
So where's the moral outrage? Well, there is money here.
yeah, so we can't change what we're doing,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. it's-
People could lose jobs. Jobs that should never have been created in that area.
Yeah.
Right.
So they should have alternatives, like maybe they should go out and maybe clean up all the crap out of the oceans.
Yeah, or put solar, you know, have sustainable energy
Exactly,
production. There's a lot of money
there's an
made
alternative
to
industry
do
for them
that.
to go to.
Yeah.
Just like we said, what about the jobs? When we wanted to close Rocky Flats, we said the cleanup is the new economy, and they had jobs for 20 more years.
But it was only 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they also were allowed to have training for new careers.
Right.
So there was a transition period,
Yeah.
not 20, but 10. But still, that's a long, long warning and retraining period. So they didn't just get dumped out on the streets for the most part. Sick.
Unless anyone else has anything, why don't we end the meeting, that everyone's free to stay and talk with one another and brainstorm and please help us stay on.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank
much.
All right, thanks for joining us today on the Grizzled Survivor Show. That was the Rocky Flats Right to Know meeting. If you're interested in attending, I will put the details in the description. We'll also put the details for this artist here in the description as well. After you're done donating to my Patreon, donate to this guy's Patreon too. Until we meet each other again in the wasteland, happy survival.
Okie dokie.